Welcome, I'm Sam Faddis. This is Ground Truth, and today we're going to be talking about, I guess, most generally, we're going to be talking about illegal immigration. But maybe, for folks that have listened to me on a lot of other occasions, maybe from a slightly different take, because previously, probably most of the time, I'm talking in terms of, ending illegal immigration, border security, a focus on those issues. And that's going to be part of what we're going to talk about. But in some way, we're going to kind of flip this to the other side here and look at other aspects of the impact of illegal immigration that I know I certainly haven't explored in this program. So, like, what the heck happens to the people that are trapped in this status of illegal, and the exploitation, and what industries are doing what, utilizing that labor? And then maybe bringing this at the end to down to, okay, so going forward, what the heck are we going to do? Like, how are we going to deal with all of these issues and deal with potential impact on industries and things like that? So, um, with us to illuminate this, a guy who I think, well, I don't know, I was going to say unique insight. That's not true, but certainly valuable insight in that he has lived this. Laz Ayala, who is, came here himself in an illegal status as a very young man from El Salvador, fleeing the violence in the middle of the Civil War there. He's a filmmaker, he's an author, he's a philanthropist, he's a U.S. cit, and he has a book and a film out now, both of them the same title, Illegal. Laz, welcome.
Sam, thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on, man. And as you and I talked the other day off air preparing for this, as folks that listen to this program know, I do that typically with everybody that I interview, spend time up front trying to educate myself enough to intelligently, hopefully intelligently, walk through the issues. And I was really intrigued by the insights that you have because you are shining a light on elements of this whole problem, if that's the right word, whole situation that don't get a lot of attention, which is okay. So what is the reality of this whole system of undocumented workers and illegals and folks that what does that mean for them, and who the heck is employing them and under what conditions? So let's start with this. I referenced real briefly you coming to this country. I think you told me at the age of 14. Can you walk us through how you got here?
Certainly. So, Sam, my story, and I will be I'll try to be as brief as possible. But my story essentially is that of an immigrant, like that of millions of others. But in my case, I came here to the U.S. in 1981, fleeing from a civil war that left over 80,000 people dead in my native country of El Salvador, forced about 1.5 million of us out. Many of us ended up here in the U.S., some with political asylum, some undocumented. We just had to flee at the moment and go wherever we could for safety. My father and my older brother and I came here together after a 2 week long journey, traveling through Guatemala and Mexico. We crossed the trunk of excuse me, we crossed the U.S.-Mexican border in Tijuana in the trunk of a car, settled in Southern California, did a lot of the jobs that many undocumented immigrants do. My first job was as a dishwasher at a Mexican restaurant at the age of 15 years old while I was going to school, learning English, and worked my way up from there. Uh, I finished high school. I got enrolled at a community college. I got kicked out because I was still undocumented, although I was paying for my own classes and my own tuition, and I had dreams to get ahead and contribute to the country and become the most, in my mind at least, the most productive citizen that I could become. That door closed. And not long after that, I moved to Southern Oregon, where I started a career in real estate that has now been just a little over 30 years, where I have built a development and construction company here in Southern Oregon. And I have been blessed in many ways that I never expected economically, as a person, as a human being. And I'm grateful for all those things, for all the opportunities that I've had in this country. And I love this country. I would defend it. I would fight. And when I say I would defend it, I would say I'm attempting to contribute in that sense as a citizen today, as a U.S. citizen, and to engage civically and hopefully make a contribution in this conversation of immigration. That's, in a nutshell, my story as an undocumented immigrant. Your next question might be, well, why in the hell am I doing this since I made it to the top and I've done so well? So why am I getting myself involved in this? And that's a good question too. But I'll let you.
No, that's a
Uh,
great question, man. Actually, this will be easier for me because you can do the answers and the questions, and I can just get a cup of coffee. No, that no, that's exactly right. Well, I mean, actually, my first observation was going to be, look, um, writ large, this is, and, I'm not ducking the issue of legalities in the border. Again, I've written and talked about this a lot, but writ large, your life story is the history of the United States of America. I mean, my dad's family originally came here in the middle of the 1700s. My wife's family came here in the early 1900s out of Poland, but this is the history of America, which is people coming here from wherever they come and building a life and also contributing to the country and loving the country and leaving the country better off than when they arrived. But let's get to your question. Uh, so okay, you've from being in the trunk of a car as a teenager to where you are now. Why are we diving into all this? Why don't you just enjoy your money and figure out where you're going on vacation this winter?
right, and that's a question that I had, Sam, that I wrestled with for about a year. And this was about 4 years ago. The question was, okay, I'm here, but the narrative towards undocumented immigrants, the language that I started hearing towards undocumented immigrants, starting around 7 years ago, was a narrative that I had not experienced, that I had not really heard in the almost 40 years that I've lived in this country. And that narrative was a narrative of dehumanization, of criminalization of the immigrants. And again, I'm first of all, for your audience, I'm not here to advocate for illegal immigration. I'm not. I'm actually advocating for the opposite, and your audience will get to hear more about that towards the end of the show. But I'm not advocating for illegal immigration. I'm actually advocating for legal immigration. Um, but um, but what got me involved on this issue is the dehumanizing, the criminalizing language that I heard, 4 7 years ago, that I hadn't heard before. And for me, that was really an attack on my own story, my own history, the history of millions of immigrants, not just people that come from Central America or Mexico, but from all over the world, that contribute, that have built this country, that have made this country what it is. And I just felt like my own humanity, my own dignity was under attack, and of course that of others. When I started hearing that, illegal immigrants are rapists and murderers and drug dealers and tax cheats and welfare recipients, I'm like, whoa, 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 that's not my story. And I know a lot of people that have come here undocumented, and that is just not true. I'm not saying that there aren't criminals or that there aren't people that that do illegal stuff. Well, just like there are in every community, correct? I mean, that happens in every group. But I felt like it was an attack, and that what I really saw is it was the politicization of this topic of immigration, highly politicized. And there was one side of the story that was being told that it in itself wasn't completely accurate. But there wasn't a voice from the immigrant, and there really hasn't been. There really hasn't been someone in this country who can come out and say, "Whoa, here's my story. Here's what I've done, and here's who I am." Someone that could actually, have these conversations, with a wider audience, and like what we are having today. So I waited for years for someone with a similar story to come up and, tell our version of the story. Seeing that no one was stepping up, I felt like, well, wow, well, maybe I need to do something about it. Maybe I need to, share my story with an effort, with a goal, I guess, of educating, of just, shedding some light on some myths and facts around this issue. So I started presenting at Rotary clubs here in Southern Oregon, where I live. That evolved into writing op-eds, writing a book, and later producing a documentary featuring the story of undocumented immigrants. What they are, why they come here, and really digging deeper into the system that we have today, which is a system that has been enabled by our laws, a system of what I call a system of exploitation. And concluding that we have an illegal immigration issue today, if we want to call it an issue, by design, not by default. People are not coming here because um, they want to come here illegally. They're coming here because that is the path that we have in place for people to come here to provide their labor. We have created that system. And you can ask me why and how I say that, and I'll be happy to expand on
Well, I got to ask some of my own questions here, or otherwise,
that. Sure.
like I won't have a show anymore. But
uh,
no, I think you framed it excellently and brought it right to where I hoped we would be when we were talking the other day. One of the things that you and I both discussed offline is okay. So you know, the number one draw here, the reason most of these folks are coming overwhelmingly is for economic benefit. And there, in other words, there is a magnet drawing them here. And so we have entire industries um, that are feeding off of this supply of labor.
Correct.
And and hand in hand with that goes the fact that because they are feeding off of labor that is illegal, and I'm not trying to get pejorative with terminology. I don't want to get hung up on this. I just mean straight up, folks are here in a non-legal status. Therefore, by definition, your capacity to complain about your wages, your your working conditions, your anything is essentially nil. I mean, if you have no legal status and you don't exist and you're off
Right.
the books, well, you can't go run into anybody. So there's this whole, therefore, that entire thing, that entire universe that I've just thrown out there that we were talking about the other day, which is okay. So we have all these industries, and why are they pulling all of these people here? And then what are the implications for the industries? And then also, what are the implications for all these people that are stuck in this limbo status? I mentioned to you when we were
Mm-hmm.
talking the other day, when I was running for Congress down in the state of Maryland a few years ago, and I won't get into names here, but I was pretty hard over on immigration in the sense of we need to get control of this. We cannot have unchecked illegal immigration. No country can function, etc., if without control over its borders. And I would have major Republican donor businessmen come up to me who operated landscaping businesses or they operated various agricultural enterprises, greenhouses, and so forth, who employ, I mean, in the Washington suburbs, if they roll up to your lawn to do landscaping, every guy that gets off the truck is somebody who came out of Central America sometime relatively recently,
Mm-hmm.
to the exclusion of everybody else. I mean, that's not an exaggeration. There are no black guys. There are no white guys. It's all Hispanic guys that came straight out of El Salvador, or Guatemala, Honduras, or wherever. And these
Yep.
guys, these businessmen would come up to me and say, yeah, I hear you on the illegal immigration, Sam. Obviously, this is a private conversation, but you got to go easy on that. Basically, because I can't run my business under my current business model if I actually have to start paying people a living wage. If I actually start having to follow the law on all the things it requires, workman's comp and social security and wages and workplace safety, I'm out of, essentially what they're saying is, at least under their current business model, I'm out of business. So these are all hardcore conservative guys that in the light of day are telling me, absolutely seal the border, for the love of God, we got to stop this mass of people coming across, and then are turning around in private, pulling me aside and saying, hey, but you can't cut off my flow of labor out of Honduras, because I can't start paying American cits to do that work. They'll eat me alive. So this is
Very
the
true.
kind of talking out of both sides of our mouths thing that we've done for a long time. So back to you.
Correct.
I mean, what are the implications for folks in this illegal status in terms of their work environment, and what are the main industries that we're talking about that employ these people?
So, Sam, first I think we have to recognize, and what I just heard you say I think, is an acknowledgement of a system of illegal employment that exists in our great country today by design. It exists by design, and that is because we have lobbyists and we have industries that depend on illegal labor, um, which has existed for decades, right? And you're right. On one side, we say we don't want illegal immigration. On the other side, we have industries through their lobbying powers, lobbying for loopholes or for the system to remain the same, for the status quo to remain. And that's where we are today. So basically, it has become nothing but a political game. And I would say that, and that's not an attack on one party or the other. Democrats, in my mind, are just as guilty as Republicans of this issue.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. This is
I'm
this
a,
is an example of the uniparty in action, as far as I can see.
absolutely, and I tell people I'm an equal opportunity critic, and I give it to both sides the same. So, so, uh, so if we recognize, if we understand that we have a system that is there by design, illegal immigration is there by design. It sounds like we are agreeing on that, and it is that way. It is politicized. Um, it's and it's a system that to some degree has worked in the past economically, but I don't believe it's working anymore. I don't believe that the economic benefit to this country uh, um, is negative. Or excuse me, it's positive anymore. I believe at this point, this is just not sustainable. We're spending over $8 billion a year in enforcement, illegal immigration enforcement, mostly at the border, and about 60% of that is going into private detention facilities. These are for-profit detention facilities that are charging us, the taxpayers, $120 per detainee a day. Last time I checked, there were 40,000 detainees in these detention facilities. You do the math. Uh, 40,000 at $120 a head.
Yep.
Okay, these people are treated as a commodity in these detention facilities, where they have no incentive to release them any sooner than they have to. Some of these people are held for months, in some cases years. Okay, they're basically a commodity, and you and I are paying for their detention. On top of that, we are talking about building a $20 billion wall at the border to keep people out. And I'm not against border security. I'm old, but let's build it. If we're going to build a wall or a fence, whatever we're going to do, let's not do it. So that with the end goal of stopping illegal immigration, because that's not going to stop illegal immigration. As long as there's demand on this side of the border, people will find a way to get here. And so what we need to do is address the demand side. What do I mean by that? We need to enforce the laws with the employer. People often say that we have an illegal immigration problem. I would say what we have is an illegal employment problem. We have an illegal employment problem that has been enabled by our own laws, by our own government. And if we are serious about ending that system of illegal employment, or that system, what I call a system of exploitation, because it is a system of exploitation, then we need to start by enforcing the law with the employers. We need to have tough enforcement with the employers and address the demand. If we can address the demand, people will stop coming. But then the question is, whoa, 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 whoa. But we need the workers, right? That's back to your point. We need the workers. Well, if we as a country believe that we need the workers, then let's create a legal path for these people to come here to work a season. And as you mentioned earlier, most people come here for economic opportunity, for economic reasons. Sam, no one wants to leave, abandon their families, their home country if they don't have to. In my case, I had to flee, for safety. But I would venture to say that 80% of the people that are coming to this country today are coming here for economic reasons. If they were given the opportunity to come here to work a season, work 2, 3, 4, 6 months, and be allowed to return to their communities, they would take that in a heartbeat. And that includes probably many of the 11 million people living here today. People don't want to leave their families behind. They don't want to abandon their communities. They don't want to be separated from their families. And so if we agree that we need their labor, then let's expand, let's fix our guest worker program so that we have the needed labor to sustain our industries, agriculture, construction, hospitality, whatever. Why don't we have that? Right today, let's talk about the agricultural industry, which, by the way, it's disappearing. And if you talk to any farmer in this country, and I've talked to a number of them, will tell you that their biggest challenge today is labor, finding reliable labor. And many of these commercial farming operations are going out of business because they don't have the adequate labor supply. They cannot find them. They cannot find domestic workers. And they, in the current condition today, they are not able to bring in legal workers, guest workers, because there's so much red tape and bureaucracy in those guest worker programs. And of course, the number of visas allowed for say, the agricultural industry is a drop in the bucket, 250,000 visas a year to supply an industry that needs probably about 3 to 4 million workers a year. And so why do we have this system that forces people to come here illegally, where they are broken up from their families here and abroad, they're marginalized, they're exploited, and at the same time, we leave our industries vulnerable because what happens? You're a dairy farm, all of a sudden ICE shows up, does a raid, picks up all your workers. Now what do you do as a dairy farmer? They just took all of your workers. Imagine the impact on that business, and who wants to be in a business that's living in that kind of unpredictability. So the issue is complicated. This is threatening many businesses that are supplying our food, and more because of this reason, we are depending more and more on imports, fruits, vegetables, to come from other countries where we have no control. I tell people, when I have these conversations, we just recently faced a crisis with medical supplies because we have been making them in China, and because we've outsourced everything. And so we are currently outsourcing our food more and more and more. And that, in my mind, poses a national security issue. If we're going to start depending on more and more imports for our food supply, we might want to think about that a little harder. So the issue goes so much beyond illegal employment or illegal immigration. It really gets into a national security issue.
Well, Laz, I think that is a perfect note on which to wrap up, actually. But let me bring it back to this, because I think you have some fascinating, real truth-telling kind of insights into a problem, again, a situation which often just gets talked about in sort of slogan form without any real thought. So again, you have a book out called Illegal, and you have done a documentary film under the same title. Am I correct in that?
That is correct, Sam. And I did both, again, with the same, with that goal, of educating, at least providing the perspective of the immigrant and providing a fresh perspective in this conversation, with the goal of getting the public engaged in this conversation and finding some common sense solutions.
So where can we find the book, and where can folks find this documentary if they're interested in watching it?
Fantastic question. Yes, illegaltheproject.org is our website where you can find our schedule of screenings that are taking place today all over the country at different film festivals, and where you can also purchase the book. Illegaltheproject.org. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Illegal the Project. You can find us there. You can find the book on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Book Baby. But our website is probably the best place to start.
Illegaltheproject.org.
Yes, sir.
Laz, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it.
Sam, thank you for having me.
And thank you for listening. We'll talk to you next time on Ground Truth.